In a twist no one saw coming, Carole Middleton has shaken the foundations of Buckingham Palace with a move so bold it reportedly brought Queen Camilla to tears. For years, tensions between the Middletons and the royal family simmered quietly, but now that silence has been shattered. Behind palace doors, loyalties are tested, influence is shifting, and a new power dynamic is emerging. What exactly did Carole do, and why could this moment change the monarchy forever? For over a decade, Carole Middleton has been far more than just the mother of the Princess of Wales. She's been a steady, grounding presence behind the scenes of a centuries-old institution. While most royal in-laws fade quietly into the background once their children marry into the monarchy, Carole remained a constant figure in the lives of William and Catherine. Her support wasn't just emotional, it was strategic. Friends and royal watchers alike have noted how Carole's involvement helped ease Catherine's difficult transition into royal life following her marriage to Prince William in the spring of 2011. Carole offered something Buckingham Palace rarely could: warmth, familiarity, and a sense of normality, rooted in family rather than formality. She helped raise the royal couple's children, stood by her daughter through public scrutiny, and quietly provided a stabilizing force amid the pressures of royal duty. While she never held a title, Carole's influence was undeniable. An unofficial advisor whose instincts often mirrored the public's sentiment far more closely than the traditionalist tendencies of palace courtiers. Over time, her presence became more than familial, it was foundational. Many credit her calming influence as one of the reasons why Prince William and Princess Catherine maintained a relatable, modern public image. Her role wasn't flashy or official, but it was deeply significant, and increasingly it seemed to challenge the unspoken hierarchy within the palace. As the years passed, this quiet power didn't go unnoticed, especially by Queen Camilla. What may have once been seen as harmless maternal support slowly became viewed by some in the palace as a subtle threat, one that didn't play by the old rules, yet somehow kept winning the public's favor. Queen Camilla's journey into the heart of the British monarchy has been anything but smooth. Long painted by the press and public as the other woman in the tragic story of Charles and Diana, she endured decades of scorn and skepticism. Since the early 2000s, Camilla fought tooth and nail to not just be accepted, but to hold power in her own right. After finally being crowned Queen Consort in the spring of 2023, Camilla solidified her influence over royal operations, but even that hard-earned authority now faces a quiet, unexpected challenge. From Camilla's perspective, tradition is not just protocol, it's armor. She sees strict adherence to royal customs as essential to protecting the institution and legitimizing her place within it. So when Carole Middleton, an untitled self-made woman, began to exert more influence in Prince William and Princess Catherine's lives, Camilla reportedly viewed it as more than a family matter. It was a test of power. According to royal insiders, Camilla has long felt that William and Catherine should be fully molded by the monarchy, not shaped by middle-class values. She allegedly pushed for their full alignment with palace protocol, hoping to gradually edge Carole out of their inner circle. This wasn't just about royal decorum. It was a calculated effort to contain an influence she couldn't control. But what Camilla didn't anticipate was Carole's resolve. Where others bowed to palace expectations, Carole remained steadfast. Her proximity to the future king and queen wasn't just emotional, it was strategic. And as Camilla clung tighter to her vision of tradition, Carole began to quietly rewrite the rules from within, setting the stage for the confrontation that would shake Buckingham Palace to its core. Though the public face of the royal family often shows unity and grandeur, the relationship between the Middletons and Buckingham Palace began to quietly fracture as early as 2013. That was the year Prince George was born, an event that brought immense public celebration but also stirred behind-the-scenes tensions that had long simmered beneath the surface. With the arrival of a future king, the royal institution mobilized its time-tested protocols. nannies with elite credentials, formal schedules, and a child-rearing system dictated more by palace officials than parents. This return to rigid royal tradition didn't sit well with Carole Middleton, who had successfully raised 3 children, including the future Queen of England, without any such interventions. Carole, naturally assuming a grandmotherly role, found herself increasingly excluded from George's early life. Her suggestions for childcare were reportedly acknowledged politely, then ignored. Even basic visits required negotiation through layers of scheduling, with cancellations and changes becoming the norm. Over time, her influence in her grandson's upbringing was systematically diminished, not by direct confrontation, but by cold bureaucratic maneuvering. This pattern of subtle exclusion wasn't just personal, it was strategic. According to former palace staff, the institution has long mastered the art of sidelining outsiders without ever explicitly doing so. Despite Prince William's reported efforts to keep his in-laws close, the palace machinery proved difficult to outmaneuver. By the time Princess Charlotte was born in 2015, this divide had become harder to hide. Carole's access remained limited, her input gently rebuffed. Yet through it all, she stayed silent, not because she was weak, but because she was watching, remembering, and waiting for the right moment to respond. Princess Charlotte's christening in the summer of 2015 was meant to be a celebration, a joyful blend of royal tradition and personal family heritage. For Carole Middleton, it was a chance to bring both sides of her granddaughter's identity together, with a post-ceremony gathering planned that reflected her own family's values and customs. But what began as a gesture of unity quickly transformed into a pivotal moment in the growing royal rift. 3 days before the christening, Carole was reportedly informed of sweeping changes. The guest list she and her family had helped craft was suddenly expanded to include aristocrats closely tied to Queen Camilla. The venue, originally envisioned as an intimate family setting, was relocated to a more formal palace location. Even the menu, thoughtfully curated with Middleton family favorites, was replaced with traditional royal fare. To the outside world, everything appeared regal and composed, but behind the scenes, Carole's contributions were methodically erased. The changes weren't framed as dismissals, they were presented as necessary adjustments, made under the guise of royal protocol. But to those close to the situation, the message was clear. The Middletons may be related by marriage, but they would not be permitted to shape royal traditions. Kate, caught in the crossfire, reportedly tried to mediate but ultimately had little say in the decisions made. For Carole, the experience was eye-opening. This was no longer about subtle sidelining. It was an unmistakable effort to diminish her family's influence. The christening, meant to welcome a child into 2 families, instead marked the moment when the divide between the royal establishment and the Middletons became unavoidably personal. By the time Prince Charles celebrated his 70th birthday in the autumn of 2018, Carole Middleton had spent nearly a decade trying to maintain a dignified presence within the royal family. But during that evening's elegant reception, an overheard conversation would lay bare the unspoken bias that had long lingered beneath royal smiles and polite courtesies. Queen Camilla, reportedly surrounded by her closest friends, many of whom hailed from aristocratic families with centuries-old ties to the monarchy, was overheard making pointed remarks about new money and the difference between commercial success and proper heritage. While Carole's name was never mentioned directly, the implication was impossible to ignore. In that moment, Carole's success, her self-built business, her middle-class roots, wasn't admired. It was weaponized. The sting was not just in the words, but in their setting. Surrounded by the grandeur of royal privilege, Carole came to realize that no amount of polite behavior or quiet loyalty would ever grant her equal footing in those rooms. Her family's very ascent from a modest kitchen business to the highest echelons of British society was being used against them. This moment reportedly shifted something in Carole. The years of compromise, of being gracious in the face of snubs, now felt like silent surrender. If the palace would always see her as an outsider, perhaps it was time to stop playing by their rules. What followed wasn't a public outcry or a scandal, but a private resolve to protect her family by any means necessary, even if it meant confronting the monarchy head-on. As the years went on, Carole Middleton continued to show public grace, but behind palace walls, her exclusion grew more pronounced. Family visits were routinely canceled or rescheduled under the guise of royal obligations. Holiday plans were altered at the last minute. Even William's efforts to split time between royal duties and Middleton family traditions became points of contention. One particularly painful contrast emerged over time. While Camilla's own grandchildren from her first marriage were increasingly welcomed into royal events and photo opportunities, Carole's access to her own grandchildren was shrinking. The optics did not go unnoticed, nor did the message behind them. By early 2024, the tension could no longer be hidden. At Prince Louis's school concert that March, observers noted how Carole and Camilla stood at opposite ends of the room, avoiding even basic greetings. Prince William, clearly uneasy, was seen escorting each woman separately throughout the evening in an attempt to ease the divide. Throughout it all, Carole never spoke out, but that didn't mean she wasn't paying attention. Friends and close acquaintances later revealed that she had been documenting everything, every snub, every sudden change of plan, and every whispered slight. She wasn't preparing for a scandal. She was preparing for the moment when she would no longer be ignored. When that moment arrived, it would come quietly. No press, no drama. Just a mother walking into Buckingham Palace with a briefcase in hand, ready to finally be heard. It was a cold February morning in the year 2024 when Carole Middleton quietly walked through the gates of Buckingham Palace, unaccompanied and without fanfare. Those who saw her described her expression as calm but determined. She wasn't there for pleasantries. Tucked under her arm was a simple leather briefcase. Inside, according to palace insiders, were documents that would turn the palace's polished calm into uneasy silence. Though no official details have been released, multiple sources suggest the contents included years of carefully gathered notes, correspondence, and potentially even financial records. Whispers began to circulate that Carole had obtained evidence pointing to a series of questionable financial dealings, shell companies, off-the-record meetings, and unexplained transactions that could raise eyebrows, even within royal circles. But Carole's goal wasn't to expose corruption. It was to shine a light on the systematic exclusion of her family and the invisible power struggles orchestrated to keep her at bay. One insider claimed she laid out a timeline of decisions that slowly pushed her further from her daughter's life, showing how royal protocol had been used as a shield for personal maneuvering. After reviewing the material, Queen Camilla was reportedly visibly shaken. According to one palace aide, she left the meeting in tears, a rare and telling display from someone known for her composure. This wasn't just about a grandmother's access, it was about control, legacy, and the growing realization that Carole Middleton wasn't the quiet party planner everyone had underestimated. She was, in fact, a formidable force with the will and now the proof to shift the balance of power behind royal walls. The aftermath of Carole Middleton's quiet but seismic visit to Buckingham Palace wasn't marked by headlines or breaking news. It was far more subtle and all the more telling. Within hours, meetings were postponed. Aides who had long retired were suddenly called back in for consultations, and conversations behind palace walls dropped to cautious whispers, as though everyone feared being overheard. Though the palace made no public statement, royal watchers quickly noted a pattern of last-minute cancellations and reshuffled appearances. Events where Queen Camilla was scheduled to attend were quietly adjusted, and her absence began stretching from days into more than a week. In an institution where visibility is power, that silence spoke volumes. Even more striking were the reactions of those within the royal ecosystem. Companies holding royal warrants reportedly began reviewing their affiliations. Media coverage grew more speculative. Some staff members, particularly those close to Princess Catherine, were said to be increasingly sympathetic toward Carole's position, describing her years of quiet exclusion as unfair and calculated. For Queen Camilla, the fallout was personal. Her influence, once ironclad, now seemed less certain. Observers noted a change in her demeanor, more reserved, more guarded. The woman who had once climbed the royal hierarchy with sheer perseverance now seemed to be facing a force she hadn't anticipated, a mother determined to protect her daughter and reclaim her rightful place. Behind the palace's carefully curated public image, a quiet reckoning was underway, and though no declarations were made, it was clear that a new chapter had begun, one where the old rules no longer guaranteed control. As Queen Camilla receded from the spotlight, another figure began to rise, gracefully, steadily, and without announcement. Princess Catherine, once seen as the quiet, dutiful wife of the future king, now stood at the center of a growing shift within the monarchy. In the wake of her mother's bold move, Catherine didn't rebel, she recalibrated. The transformation wasn't loud, it unfolded through subtle but powerful changes. Her office was relocated closer to King Charles's own workspace, a gesture of trust, signaling her deeper involvement in royal decision-making. Public appearances increased, and in many, Catherine appeared not as a supporting figure, but as a confident leader in her own right. Her approach was distinctly modern. While previous generations of royals maintained a formal distance from the public, Catherine leaned into relatability. She reused outfits, mixed designer labels with high street brands, and allowed authentic glimpses of royal family life to appear on social media. These weren't just style choices, they were strategic decisions aimed at modernizing the monarchy. Insiders revealed that Prince William increasingly deferred to Catherine on matters involving public engagement and social perception. Her insight, shaped by both royal expectations and her middle-class upbringing, bridged tradition with contemporary sensibilities. She didn't just fit into the royal mold, she reshaped it. And while Camilla's role was quietly scaled back, Catherine's visibility and authority only grew. Where once she was guided by protocol, now she was helping set it, and standing behind her, though rarely seen, was the woman who had shaped her values, supported her through every challenge, and now, quietly, helped her ascend. Carole Middleton. By early 2025, the palace no longer operated under the same quiet confidence it once had. Though no official shifts were announced, signs of transformation were everywhere. Royal events were organized differently. Appearances featured new faces in prominent roles. Queen Camilla, once a mainstay at high-profile gatherings, was increasingly absent or moved to the periphery. The Royal Windsor Horse Show, an event where Camilla had long held a coveted place, became a symbolic turning point. That year, she was quietly advised to sit it out. Officially, it was a temporary pause. But for those familiar with palace protocol, the message was unmistakable. In the royal world, absence is never accidental. Visibility is power, and Camilla's was fading. Even holiday traditions carried new meaning. At the royal Christmas photo, Catherine and William stood prominently at the center, while Camilla appeared at the edge. Seating at the Christmas dinner was rearranged due to seasonal rotation, yet it mirrored the growing shift in internal dynamics. Media outlets, which had spent years rehabilitating Camilla's public image, began revisiting old controversies. It wasn't a smear campaign, it was a quiet recalibration, one that allowed readers to draw their own conclusions about where influence now resided. Among palace insiders, it became clear that the dynamics behind the throne were changing. Carole Middleton had never needed a title to make an impact. Her influence had arrived not through royal blood, but through unwavering loyalty, quiet strategy, and a steadfast commitment to her daughter's well-being. And in doing so, she helped rewrite what power could look like in the modern monarchy. As the dust settled from months of subtle upheaval, one thing became clear: the monarchy had entered a new era, and the Middletons were now firmly at the heart of it. Carole Middleton's unexpected challenge may have triggered the shift, but it was Catherine who now carried its momentum forward. In an institution obsessed with heritage and hierarchy, the rise of a middle-class family from Berkshire would once have been unthinkable. But times have changed. The public no longer views tradition as inherently noble. They want authenticity, relatability, and stability. And that's exactly what Catherine and the Middleton family represent. Carole's decades of discretion, her quiet grace in the face of slights, and her strategic support of her daughter have reshaped the palace from the inside. Her influence may never be officially acknowledged, but those paying attention know exactly what role she played. Meanwhile, Catherine continues to evolve, not as a replacement for Camilla, but as a royal figure built for a new generation. Her partnership with William is stronger than ever, and her guidance is increasingly sought on matters once reserved for senior courtiers. She understands the people because she is of the people, and that makes her the monarchy's greatest modern asset.